Zach, we are back and we are talking what we would trade every top 12 Dynasty wide receiver for. Now, I just pulled this off Keep Trade Cut. Is not necessarily our rankings. I wanted to pull from the ethos that is Dynasty Fantasy Football crowdsourcing a little bit and put this list together here. We'll be talking through 6 today, 6 tomorrow, provided things plan out how editing Bob would like them to. But with that said, if you do enjoy this video, please leave a like, comment down below what you would move some of these wide receivers for, and keep in mind that we're not necessarily advising to sell them, but if we were selling them, if you're in the market to sell for whatever reason, these are the costs we're looking for, and hey, maybe you're in the market to buy one of these guys. These are the prices you might be having to pay. And if you want to know the specific cost to buy any player, head on over to patreon.com/Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. We have a trade advice column in there that you can drop any question 24/7 and get to know some costs. With all that said, Zach, all the promo in the books, let's get to the content that people came for. You were tasked with the price to sell Justin Jefferson. Now, is there a reason to sell Justin Jefferson? Are you wanting to move off in any shape or form? If so, why? Either way, what's the cost you're looking to maybe have to pay to get Justin Jefferson, or a cost you're willing to sell him for if you do have him and don't want to move off? What do you got, Zach?
Yeah, Bob, this is a wide receiver that when you open the document, you see the title and I see the name. I just put no. I literally just put no. I don't want to move him. Wide receiver 1 has all the ceiling in the world, has performed with his quarterback, has performed without his quarterbacks, has performed injured, has just had some insane weeks, hasn't really had these big stretch of down weeks like some of these wide receivers maybe we'll talk about later. I just see no reason to want to move off Justin Jefferson. If there's any wide receiver of the 3 or 4 guys that are in the first tier, this is just a guy that if I have no intention of moving. I make no attempt to move. I don't even place on the trade block unless I'm trolling. This is somebody I'd like to acquire in almost every single situation because he's a fantastic building block. So no, I have no desire to move. I have no reason or want to move Justin Jefferson, no matter what. He fits every team paradigm at this moment, a rebuilding team, a competing team. He checks every single box right now. So I did have to put on this list because you're just a savage. What would be the cost to trade Justin Jefferson? And if I'm going to do that, I don't want to get 3 or 4 pieces for Justin Jefferson. I want an alpha. I want the equivalent of Justin Jefferson at another position. And the only thing I could really think of was CJ Stroud in this position. Patrick Mahomes, and you could put Jalen Hurts in that box. You could put Josh Allen in that box. Those guys are a little bit older. And so, look, you think they can play in the NFL another 10 years. You never know. You never know when somebody's going to Andrew Luck, or you never know when someone's going to just start to fall off a cliff, especially the way those 2 quarterbacks play football. CJ Stroud checks every single box that Justin Jefferson checks off with his youth, with the amount of time that you can have Justin Jefferson on your dynasty roster, with the ceiling that he provides to your team. So for that reason, if I am going to move Justin Jefferson, it has to be for a player that does the same thing, just at a different position. And so the only thing I could really think of, I'm sure there's a running back maybe that you could put there, but I'd rather go with a position that's more valuable to dynasty and to fantasy football. So for me to move off Justin Jefferson, it would have to be for CJ Stroud. But even then, I don't want to necessarily do it. You're making me, you're putting me in a hard place here, but I'm not going to cry if I'm getting CJ Stroud in trade for Justin Jefferson here, Bob.
I do think we should mention, first and foremost, Superflex values is what we're talking here. And we did have a bit of a rule as well that we're not trading any of these players for other players on this list. We don't want to just do a cop out and, tier off of Justin Jefferson to go get CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase or any of those guys. Even in the top 12, we refrained from trading down or tiering down to any of them. We wanted to see what it would really cost, big prices, not just throwing a bunch at the wall to see what sticks, to get these guys in your roster. And I think, honestly, if there is a window or a reason to sell, and this isn't a cost I'm suggesting because it's against the rules that I made, Zach, I could see a reason or an avenue or a thought process that suggests maybe his quarterback situation isn't that great this year. If I could stay in the same tier and get to a CeeDee Lamb if I'm trying to be competitive, or a Jamar Chase or something along those lines, that I still think are going to put up top 4 or 5 wide receiver numbers, I'm open to that. That's palatable to me. But otherwise, yeah, I'm looking at a top asset like a CJ Stroud. But like I said, that's outside the parameters of what we're trying to do here. So I'm not suggesting that, just merely saying, hey, I'll put it in there as a bit of a cop out option there, that little bit. If there is any reason, that's about one of the only ones. And with that said, I'll just move right on into my next one. Talking CeeDee Lamb, just talked about him. And similar concept, not a real reason to move off of. I don't expect any hiccup in the quarterback situation for CeeDee Lamb this year or anything to do with his targets. I can't think of any great reason why anyone would want to sell CeeDee Lamb outside of trying to reload your roster and spread out viable assets across it. Maybe you won the championship last year with a ton of aging assets that have really hit their peak and really are about to age out. You have a lot of concerns with guys this year that just aren't going to do the same thing. So maybe you're, like I said, just trying to reload the roster, spread things out, take a retool year, whatever the case is. But, and in that case, I imagine that we're somewhat non-competitive. Maybe we have some pieces we can work with. But if you are looking to sell, or possibly, hey, maybe you're looking to buy and trying to get him off of another roster, I'd be looking into adding somebody like Michael Pittman, or a package of Michael Pittman, Ladd McConkey, and a 25 first. Michael Pittman is still relatively young and locked into a long-term contract. On top of that, he's that tunnel target that Nate affectionately came up with and phrased. He's the leading target getter on his team, and really he is the top target getter in by a wide margin on that roster. Ladd McConkey, another guy in a position to be a tunnel target in his own right, given the other weapons on the team. Obviously, there's going to be some questions with how much this matters in a very run-heavy system, or what we expect to be. However, I think we need to maybe step back on that a little bit, because, I know we expect this to be run-heavy. They're still going to throw the ball. It's not like they're just going to run 80% of the time. They're going to throw the ball. Ladd McConkey is a target. And hey, 25 firsts are always good for business. So that's what I'd be looking to get for CeeDee Lamb if I was selling. And that's probably what you're going to have to look at if you are in the market to pay. Like I said, Michael Pittman's still relatively young. Ladd McConkey obviously still a rookie. And 25 firsts, buying those when they're the cheapest, which is they're as cheap as they're ever going to get today, as they will be before that turns into a player. So that's what I'd be looking to get if I had CeeDee Lamb and I was looking to sell, or maybe what you'll have to pay to buy. Zach, feel free to chip in on that or get right on into your next one here. Another big name. We're starting off with a lot of heavy hitters here in part one. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good trade. If I'm going to move off CeeDee Lamb, either I want kind of the same as I said in Justin Jefferson, an alpha at the position, or I need volume. And in that volume, you're getting two guys that I feel comfortable starting day one. And I'm getting an asset that I can use to buy another piece at another position. I can use to help me win a championship with a little push in the middle of the season, or I can just hold on to and pick up a third player in the draft next year. So that trade fits the parameters of what I'd be looking for if I were to move off CeeDee Lamb. Now, you tasked me with moving off or potentially looking into a Jamar Chase trade. Now, Jamar Chase is I'm considering the first tier 4 players. We talked about the first two, then Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think a lot of people agree will be the first tier of wide receivers. Jamar Chase is the name of the players in the first tier that I am not as excited. I don't want to say the least excited, because I'd still be stoked to have Jamar Chase on any roster. But of those 4 names, to me, Jamar Chase is the one that I'm not as excited as for the others. And look, obviously, there is a very high ceiling with Jamar Chase, and he is probably going to play with Joe Burrow for the rest of his career. But we are at a period right now where Joe Burrow is the model of inconsistency and the model of poor health. And he has a very big inability to stay on the field, and that affects Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase he's valued as a top 2 or 3 wide receiver, Bob. He's never finished that way. He finished top 5 once. That was his rookie year. And since then, he's been a borderline wide receiver 1. For whatever reason that is, whether that's his quarterback play, whether that's he missed 4 games in 2022. The fact of the matter is he's never finished as a top 2 or 3 wide receiver, and only one time did he finish inside the top 10. 2 out of 3 seasons, as a matter of fact. So for that reason alone, I'm not saying those things to take away from Jamar Chase. I'm saying those things that if I can get the value in a trade for a top 2 or 3 wide receiver for a guy that has thus far shown he isn't a top 2 or 3 wide receiver, then I would look into that. And that's all I'm saying here. I can already see the comment section saying, "You're such an idiot, rah." Yeah, I might be. But, you could really gain something by moving a player that is valued as a top 2 or 3 wide receiver and yet doesn't ever finish as such. I mean, just look at what you've been able to do with Drake London. Um, so look, if I'm going to move a player like Ja'Marr Chase, I don't want only draft capital. I want to tier down and I want draft capital, somewhat similar to what you did with CeeDee Lamb. When I'm looking at these first 4 guys, I want to either an alpha at another position or tier down and get volume. So I'm going to tier down from Ja'Marr Chase, and I'm going to go after Nico Collins, a 25 first and a 25 second round pick. Nico Collins, love him. Great player. Does not have the ceiling of Ja'Marr Chase. He does not have the ceiling of a top 5 wide receiver. Ja'Marr Chase does. So it costs you quite a bit more to move up from Nico Collins to Ja'Marr Chase. So I'm going to go after Nico Collins, a first and a second round pick. What say you, Bob?
I don't hate the concept of, where you're at on Ja'Marr Chase. I think any player in general that is valued over what their production has been, maybe projects to be, is just good practice. Just it's like, window shopping, seeing what's out there. When you go get new insurance, you go and check all the insurance providers to see what you can get at what cost. This is exactly what you're doing there. And to be quite honest, Zach, I think you can get more than just Nico Collins, 25 first and a second round pick. Because I've seen the YouTube comments out there. They are not as high on Nico Collins as we are. So I would not be surprised to see if you could tack on maybe a 26 first here. I don't know if that interests you as much as a 25 second, but I would not be that surprised to see you be able to get a little bit more, or maybe a player of similar consequence to the value of a first round pick. Something along those lines might be in the wheelhouse too, but I don't hate the concept here. I get what you're going for and what you're looking to do here. And hey, that's probably about the price you're going to have to pay. I think there are a lot of people that say if you had Ja'Marr Chase and you sent this offer to them off the rip, they'd smash accept. And that tells me in my brain that you should go for more. Don't hate it at all. I'll move right on into my next one. Talking Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of our favorite players, Zach. You and I have been in on this guy from the jump. Has been a great value, been constantly doubted. But similar to CeeDee Lamb, I don't think there's any great reason to sell Amon-Ra St. Brown. Locked in at quarterback, locked in as a number 1 target, just got paid. Him and Jared Goff both. Maybe you're antsy about a possible offensive coordinator change in the future. The OC there just did his, QB or head coach carousel tour before deciding to stay with Detroit. I don't think a lot of people are going to look at that and immediately suggest that if that happens, Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to lose value. So I think that's some overreactionary play there. But if I'm going to sell, I want to make a move that justifies moving down. This is one of our favorite players, Zach. So I'm going for the throat. If somebody comes at me with an offer, I want big names here. So, and maybe these aren't big enough names. Who knows? Maybe we need a better pick in here. Who knows? But can I tier down to another productive and relatively young wide receiver in DK Metcalf? DK Metcalf is older than Amon-Ra St. Brown, but still very young. Going to be 27 this year, I believe. And pick up another young stud in a position like a Dalton Kincaid, another player that we like a lot. And honestly, I think you can push to get a second round pick in here as well. Obviously, this is assuming non-tight end premium. This is a move that can keep you in a competitive push and help flush out your entire roster while, again, building up draft capital, which is particularly worthwhile in a start 10 plus if that is a league format you're in. Hey, if it's a start 8, I might just be looking to stay with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, we're trying to get as much as we can out of these players and gauge their values as much as possible. DK Metcalf, still a stud. Even though he's not a high-end wide receiver 1 by any stretch, he's still plenty capable of making a positive impact in your lineup. Dalton Kincaid, we've talked about him quite a bit. He's on a collision course for a top 5 tight end season. I think he's a lot higher in that top 5 than number 5, and is going to help you win your tight end matchups most weeks. And it's always good. Again, it's always good practice to be adding that draft capital at its cheapest cost. And a second-round pick can always be used to supplement lineup depth down the course of the season, as you kind of alluded to with a first-round pick previously. That's something that you can use to buy a Tyler Lockett, possibly even a Mike Evans from a team that, oh man, I'm not going to make the playoffs. I may as well sell out on some of these guys, get out while I still can, get some value for these pieces. That's things you can do, not necessarily saying it's going to be able to happen, but it's just an option for you down the road where you can make these moves to better your team if injuries, bye weeks that we know are going to cause issues. So that's what I'd be looking to get for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Zach, is that enough for you to sell Amon-Ra St. Brown since you were such a fan as well? What do you think about that one?
I'm going to take a different approach to this.
Okay.
I think that when you are trading Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'd want somebody with a higher ceiling than DK Metcalf. And to do that, I probably got to dip lower in the rankings. And I'm actually gonna go for his teammate in Jackson Smith-Njigba and Dalton Kincaid, and I'm gonna turn that second round pick into a first round pick.
Yeah, you have to.
And the reason I want to do that is because I feel like DK Metcalf is a very safe floor, and I want to shoot for a player that can have a higher ceiling than what DK Metcalf potentially offers. There's the risk, though, of missing there, and I'm okay with that. If I'm going to do this, I want the safe. Like I feel like the safety and security there is Dalton Kincaid. I get a first round pick just in case anything happens, and then JSN is my like lotto ticket kind of. Although he's a little bit safer than a lotto ticket, but you get the analogy that I'm making, right? Yeah. DK Metcalf, great. Wide receiver 15, wide receiver 20, solid every single season, probably. Could he have a wide receiver 7 season? Yes. I still don't think that will catapult him into the top 12 ever. But if I would like to shoot for a player with a higher ceiling, a player that at some point could be a wide receiver 1. And so for me, I'd rather aim a little bit higher there, go for JSN, and get more on the back end with the draft capital.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I don't know if I'd be able to do it personally. As much as I love JSN, I still have my doubts over what we saw last year, even though there's so much context to everything that happened, being buried on the quote-unquote target pecking order behind 2 studs, but still getting a relatively decent target share, and that's something I've been diving into doing my own 2024 projections. But either which way, I get what you're at, get where you're at, and I think it makes sense, especially with that 25 second becoming a first. That's huge. That absolutely needs to happen if that's the case. So I don't hate it. I'd probably still elect to stick with my original offer. But either which way, Zach, you have another one coming up here. You're talking one of the top rookie wide receivers that we've had come out in a long time. So what do you got? What are you looking to get?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. here, Bob. And I've seen some crazy stuff happen in some of my leagues because people are very excited about Marvin Harrison Jr. And I am someone who is very happy to capitalize on your, what I call, hopium. You know, we're coming up with some new merch designs. I'm hoping we can come up with a hopium shirt and we can get this hopium thing going because hopium is a real thing. And I'm trying to capitalize on people's hopium for Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, look, I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I am so happy to have him on my rosters. But if I can get someone to pay prices that they should be paying for CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson for Marvin Harrison, now I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I've even seen some crazier deals than that. I'm not going to list them on here because it's not realistic, and I don't want people, if they are going to shop Marvin Harrison Jr., to be asking for that because you're going to get laughed at. You know, if I'm going to have to sell Marvin Harrison Jr., I am very excited about the combination of him in Arizona with Kyler Murray. I love what that offense in terms of its personnel is shaping up to be. But if I have to move off Marvin Harrison Jr., as a player that I'm not actively shopping, but if someone blows my doors off, if they come at me and say, hey, listen, I was picking 6th in the draft. You were picking 1st. I wanted to move up. I couldn't. Let's make a deal now. I got me some Rome Odunze, and I've got Dalton Kincaid. I'd like to go up and get your Marvin Harrison Jr. And I will say, sir, you have yourself a deal. Put it there. I don't know if my hand's coming in the camera. You have yourself a deal. Maybe you're going to edit that out. I don't know. But I would be ecstatic to capitalize on Rome Odunze and Dalton Kincaid. I probably take a little bit of a hit in the first year, but I'm all gung-ho about Rome Odunze and his potential to be what Marvin Harrison Jr. is or better in that offense. So if you can get an offer in your inbox of somebody, I'm going to say this, and I feel bad, but it's the truth. Like, I don't do fluff on here, okay? I give it to you real. Somebody's going to have to overpay if they want to take Marvin Harrison Jr. from me. That's just the facts. I'm not giving you Marvin Harrison Jr. for a fair deal. So Rome Odunze, Dalton Kincaid, I feel 2 starting positions. I feel good about it. I feel great about it, as a matter of fact. That's what it would take for me to move off a prospect with the ceiling and abilities of Marvin Harrison Jr., Bob.
I don't necessarily disagree with this. This is another one where another player being valued very highly. I'll be talking about another player later in part 2 with a similar concept here. And there's nothing wrong with having high faith in Marvin Harrison. It's, again, coming down to we don't hate players, we hate values. And we really like Marvin Harrison Jr. But if you're trying to sell him at these prices that are on the fringe of an Amon-Ra St. Brown, a CeeDee Lamb, a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, before he's even played it out in the NFL, I think he's going to be great. I have him projected as a top 10 wide receiver this year. And I think that's awesome. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of players who have proven a lot that are below him on this list, just like another player that we'll talk about later. It's just one of those things I can't necessarily get behind. And again, just shop for your offers, possibly because you might be able to get ridiculous prices that can change the course of your dynasty roster for the long term. As much as Marvin Harrison can do really well to really impact one slot, you get 3 pieces for this guy. You got 2 in this offer that you suggested that can do the same thing to 2 different positions on your roster. I'm not saying it always applies. I'm not saying it'll always work, but it's just something you have to keep in the back of your mind when the value for a player is here. And, if you drafted him at 102, 101, and that's where you were in the draft, you didn't have to pay to trade up for him or anything like that. He's fine. But if you're paying these prices that are right, if you're paying the same price to go get Marvin Harrison that you could to go get Amon-Ra St. Brown, go buy Amon-Ra St. Brown. Go buy Jamar Chase. Go buy CeeDee Lamb. If you're paying the same price anyway, if that same handful of assets you're moving to go get Marvin Harrison, I'm not saying yours was, Zach, but if you're paying that same ridiculous cost, just go buy the guys we already know are good and are good right now. That's the one concept we really try to hammer in as much as we can here. So with that said, I'll get into my last one before we kick it off to part 2. Puka Nacua, is there a reason to sell, if any? I'm not someone who believes in the skepticism over Puka Nacua's record-setting rookie season. This is now the Puka Nacua show, starring Puka Nacua with guest appearances by Cooper Kupp from here on out. And now, I'm just kidding. I do think Cooper Kupp is going to factor in more to this than just a guest appearance might suggest. I have him graded out fairly well as well heading into the season in my 24 projections, but maybe you're skeptical. Maybe you don't believe as much in this first year epic breakout, and maybe you do buy into those narratives. I have no problem with making moves. I have no problem with that if and only if you're getting the right value in return. That's what it always comes down to, is value over the players, over whatever the case is. If you don't believe in a player that I do believe in, who cares? Just make sure you're getting the right value for him. That's what matters. And if you are moving off Puka because you don't necessarily subscribe to the stability or believe in, you better be buying somebody that, in this case, or sell into something that you do believe in the stability of, versus a Puka Nacua's rocky situation in quotations. And I might have to pay up to do this, but I'm okay with it. But can I use Puka Nacua to get into that range of quarterbacks on the fringe of the top 10 or 12? Quarterbacks like a Jordan Love or a Kyler Murray, who I still think Kyler Murray you can still buy a little low on. Not as low as you could have a year ago or so when he was still coming back from the ACL or whatever. But can I get away with just adding a second round pick, or to avoid Zach's quarterback tax, do I have to add a lesser valued quarterback like a Geno Smith, a Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, somebody of that ilk, to just, hey, you get a really good wide receiver, but here's a quarterback I don't really want anymore. Let me upgrade my quarterback of the future, maybe even my quarterback 1 or 2 on my team, depending on how good my current quarterback situation is. Maybe I don't have one. Maybe this is a nice building block for the future. I think Puka is too, for whatever it's worth. But if I was moving Puka, somebody who believes in Puka, this is what I'd be looking to get. Zach, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think that's a good offer there. If I'm moving off a wide receiver and getting a quarterback that I think has top 10 potential, I just couldn't be mad about that. And, depending on where or when you bought Puka Nacua or how you acquired Puka Nacua, you are getting tenfold on the value that you got him at. I'm assuming that you got him early on. You drafted him in the startup draft, or you picked him up in the rookie draft in the 5th round. I mean, you are just cashing in on that, which I got no problem with. The problem that I have is when people, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, was when people sell because they think the floor is going to fall out on this. When everything that this happened with Amon-Ra St. Brown a few years ago, where you're watching this team evolve into something different than what you've seen before. With the Lions, they were 0-10. And then they started winning games. They were 3-3 in the second half of the season. And you're like, dude, when they kind of shifted that offense to go through that kid, Amon-Ra St. Brown, things started happening for them. Like, it wasn't just Amon-Ra that was better. It was everyone that was better. It was like, why would they change that? Why, when that worked, when they were a bad football team, would they change that? With the Rams, it was a little bit different. It's like, whoa, like they have now evolved from revolving around Cooper Kupp to potentially revolving around this kid Puka Nacua. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens when Kupp comes back. Well, Kupp came back, and Kupp was great, but so was Puka. Puka was still great. And apparently there's a world where both of that can exist, and so can Kyron, and they have a very high-powered, high-ceiling offense. So I got a problem if you're moving off Puka because you feel like he's not going to be what he was. I absolutely think Puka can be a top 10 wide receiver for the next 5 years. I think that is within the realm of possibility. So, but I like the deals that you talked about here, because in them I'm getting once Jordan Love signs that contract extension, you're getting a solidified player for the next 5 years. Kyler Murray's locked into that contract. Everybody thinks that he's been in that contract. He hasn't. I think last year was the first year of that extension. And Jordan Love is going to get an extension at some point. So if you trade Puka Nacua and you land yourself a quarterback of the ilk of Jordan Love or Kyler Murray, you are now securing yourself at a very premium position in a super flex league. So I got no problems with those deals, Bob.
I love it, and I love all of you, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, comment down below some players you might be trying to move off of, and if you want to make some more deals with us, head over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial and see what we can do for your Dynasty teams. And hey, like I said at the top of the video, we're not necessarily saying, hey, go sell these guys, they suck, they're going to be garbage, or anything like that. We're saying, hey, if you are selling, if people are knocking on your doors for some of these guys, be sure to, acknowledge these values and maybe some values you might have to be paying to get some of these very high valued wide receivers on your roster as well. But with all that said, Zach and I are going to get the heck out of here. We will see you in part 2 and the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.